It's my pleasure now to introduce our second keynote speaker, Shay Bahramirad. My apologies. Shay has led the most advanced microgrid project in the US and is the Director of Distribution System Planning, System Grid and Innovation at ComEd, the utility servicing the Chicago area. Her major responsibilities include leading smart grid organisation across ComEd to develop the vision, business models and investment strategy for the grid of the future initiatives such as emerging technologies, microgrids and smart city developments. She is an adjunct professor at the Illinois Institute of Technology, teaching microgrids, elements of sustainable energy and smart grid. Her other duties have included Chair of the Board of IEEE PES Women in Power, Technical Chair of the 2016 IEEE PES T&D Conference, and Guest Editor of Technical Journals. Shay, we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Today, now, in this city and in this country, and in this industry, we are gathered as shapers undertaking the great responsibility of making the world a better place. Auckland, New Zealand is one of the world's best locations to further our work. A repeat winner of Smart City Asia Pacific Award across multiple smart city categories. New Zealand, again, is in the running to earn honors for its Smart City project. As a visitor to New Zealand for the first time, it is a great privilege to be in the company of people who are well known to be genuine, kind, welcoming, and hospitable. Beautiful and sophisticated Auckland, with its vision to be the world's most livable city, is working to realize that vision by connecting its people to enable the best possible outcome. A smart city with smart citizens and smart infrastructure. The world and the energy sector is changing, and we need to embrace the new normal in order to face the challenges in front of us. Today in cities around the globe, we are undoubtedly facing serious challenges on issues like climate change, increasing congestions, food insecurity, education and economic development, health and public safety, to name a few. To address these challenges, we are going to have to do things a bit differently as engineers. We need to be smarter about the way we produce, distribute, and use energy, the way we prepare for and respond to major weather events and man-made threats, and the way we transport people and goods. We are already beginning to see the signs of the change. Renewable and distributed energy resources are reshaping the energy system. Electric vehicle, ride-sharing, microtransit, and transit-oriented development are reinventing transportation systems. Cities are building and implementing resilient plans to plan the new normal that is extreme weather and increased physical and cyber threats. This concept of new normal is one that I think it's important to embrace. We need to recognize that the world and what we consider normal today are changing, as we need to embrace that vision of a dramatically different future because we desperately need to materialize. But by allowing ourselves to embrace this vision of a new normal, we can align tremendously resources and accomplish great things together. The type of things we need to accomplish to address these global challenges and prepare future generations for continued prosperity. With the majority of our population in urban areas, cities will be key to addressing these global challenges. In 2007, for the first time in the history, the global urban population exceeded the global rural population. The number of urban residents is expected to continue to grow. By 2050, the world's inhabitants will be 1/3 rural and 2/3 urban. Roughly, the reserve of the global rural-urban population distribution of the mid-20th century. With this in mind, Focusing effort on making cities more sustainable, resilient, and vibrant is a logical pursuit. To organize our collective efforts and thoughts around making cities smarter, it's helpful to adopt a common framework for talk about a core component of a smart city. These pillars and imperatives shown here an attempt to provide that structure. Rethinking those core components of urban life is going to be critically important to reducing carbon emission and building resilience to our communities. From a utility perspective, our first priority needs to be to support communities we serve with power systems that are clean, lean, decentralized, and communal. First pillar and the backbone of a smart city. And it's challenging because of four main factors. Number one, climate change. Two, technology innovation is creating an opportunity to do just that. Third, continually increasing customer expectations in the digital age are demanding more choice and customization. And fourth, increasingly persuasive and intense threats require way of life. In addition to transforming the energy system, the investment utilities are making can contribute significantly to forming the foundational infrastructure to power smart cities globally. Any modern city with aspiration to become truly smart absolutely requires energy and communication infrastructure that are secure, flexible, green, and resilient. These infrastructure systems are the core business of electric utilities. But how especially and specifically can electric utilities contribute to smart city development? Primarily in three areas. Number one, decarbonization investments. Two, around transportation. And third, infrastructure. The ubiquitous, advanced, and cyber-secure communication infrastructure that utilities continue to develop in support of grid-edge functions can be leveraged to enable many aspects of smart cities through sensing, analytics, connectivity, and intelligence. The impact of these leveraged communication assets is expected to multiply as utility networks expand in density and capability in steps with the increasingly dynamic electric system. To be effective in the smart city pillars beyond traditional utility borders, committed partnership and collective resolve will be the key. That's where government, academic, business, and tech, also civic organizations need to come together and truly collaborate. There are many stakeholders in these groups who are interested in, or in many cases, already heavily investing in smart cities and communities, and we need to align resources and adopt the same framework. In the end, by working to understand the communities and neighborhoods' true priorities and fostering strategic partnership, we can deliver on our vision of helping communities becoming more connected, green, and resilient. As the leading global technical organization, IEEE has an important role to play in building technical consensus and advancing the state-of-the-art for the benefit of humanity. We have over 400,000 members globally, including 37,000 members in the Power and Energy Society. That's where I volunteered for, and I'm representing PES Society today. Our mission is to advance technology for the benefit of humanity, and we bring the challenging technical issues as we face as society. We produce publications, educational materials, and events to bring people together and share knowledge that can leverage in their cities. Benefits of IEEE PES participation, learning new skills and technologies and gaining information through webinars and PES Resource Center. I encourage you to check out the websites and the resource centers. Driving and understanding and standards and key technical issues, like 1547, interconnection of distributed energy resources, 2030.7 and 2030.8. These are the two recently standards around microgrid controller integration, as well as the testing procedures. PS members comprise of 10% of worldwide IEEE membership, but we publish about 40% of global IEEE standards. Also, it enables participation to create a network of professionals and colleagues around the globe. I heard a question which was intriguing about if we are, as engineers, innovative, which was I found it very intriguing. I was reading a book recently called The Rise of a Creative Class, and talking about the fact that our society and our, in 20th century, the Industrial Revolution, we needed people who could think linearly and structurally, like many of us engineers. But in this era, with all the challenges and complex issues we are facing, we need people who can think atmospherically. And many of engineers these days, by not only focusing on power system, but learning data analytics and communication and power system, it allows them to think differently. And it's one of the things that at IEEE we take it very seriously, creating a community of inclusive engineers. One of the initiatives that I've listed here is called Women in Power. In 2012, we started this community to provide recognition and career advancement and networking for female engineers in IEEE. And you see a couple of pictures that we had in South America and India. A few more other things about what IEEE PES does around conferences. T&D, Transmission and Distribution Conference, we host about 14 to 15,000 engineers in the US at T&D conference. In 2020, it's going to be in Chicago, where I'm coming from. I would love to see you there. Consider this as an official invitation to Chicago. And then we have this steering committee to provide us support to think about the themes and the things we have to work on conferences and publications in different regions. Around standards and guidelines, requirement and metric for distributed energy resource penetration, we have a number of webinars, and we work very closely and have a number of memorandum of understanding with number of association and in the US, like Department of Energy, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, NERC, and as well as in South American Minister of Energy in number of countries to provide technical support and frameworks on their standards and the challenges they are facing, as well as creating a community and a platform to connect leaders and engineers to make sure that the lessons learned get communicated across the globe. IEEE Smart City Technical Community is focused on bringing together the broad array of technical societies within IEEE to develop technical solutions that will contribute addressing these global issues. This consortium identifies and further develops technical best practices, leveraging expertise of the broad array of IEEE societies. This serves to advance the state of the art in smart cities, and we also serve as a neutral broker of information in this regard and bringing the key stakeholders together to share, learn, and advance collectively. If you do not yet follow IEEE Smart City on Twitter, take 30 seconds to do that, then put your phone away again. As the utility coming from a utility in Chicago, in northern Illinois, we serve about 4 million customers, including City of Chicago. I'd like to walk you through what ComEd is doing in terms of transforming the energy system and in terms of benefiting our communities outside of our traditional utility borders. We have about, our peak load is that we haven't seen it since 2011 because of all the energy efficiency and behind the meter technology is about 21,000 megawatt, and then we have about 5,800 circuit miles of transmission and 65,000 circuit miles of primary distribution system. Over the past several years, we have invested heavily in the grid and fully embracing a clean energy economy, and now have a flexible energy platform upon which to drive the necessary change moving forward. To put that in context, it's helpful to understand a bit about the history of electric system in the United States. The US electric grid experienced rapid expansion in the 1950s and 1960s around after World War. Investment in the grid then slowed dramatically in the late 1970s as we entered a global economic recession and demand for new electric service dropped off. In 1980s and 1990s, we saw limited investment in the system maintenance across the industry in the United States, with work being biased toward reactive maintenance and the extent of condition type, if you will, addressing population of a given asset known to be prone to failure. This left us in the early 2000s with aged infrastructure and poor service reliability. My colleagues at ComEd quite a bit talk about the 1999 blackout that we had in Chicago that probed us to make significant investment in the years after. To give you a bit of a landmark on legislation in Illinois, in 2011, legislation was passed called Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act. It allowed us to invest $2.6 billion in our infrastructure, half of it, around $1.3 billion, to install smart meters, and $1.3 billion on smart switches and modernizing substations and distribution automation. In 2012, the frequency and the duration of outages has been reduced by nearly 46% and 47% respectively. From 2012 to 2017, there were more than 7.7 million avoided customer interruptions, and including 1.5 million in 2017 due to additional investment in distribution automation. So moving forward to 2016, we had a new piece of legislation called Future Energy Job Act, saving and creating thousands of jobs, providing training for the future workforce. And the law is by accelerating the growth of wind and solar, about 180 to $220 million per year, significantly expanding energy efficiency. We are investing about $500 million in voltage optimization, as well as providing incentive to commercial and industrial customers and community solar developers who choose to install smart inverter that is compliant with 1547. It's a $250 per kilowatt. Our regulatory body early this year approved our proposal to build a community microgrid, which will move our customers past reliability to resilience in the era of increased threats and great reliance on the grid. Microgrid are a significant tool in providing resilience, and what I mean by microgrid, there are like many definitions of it, like smart grid, like 10 to 12 years ago. US Department of Energy defines it as a group of interconnected distributed energy resources and load within an electrically defined boundary that can operate as a single controllable entity with respect to the grid. We are on a process of demonstrating their value during emergencies. For example, in the aftermath of earthquake in Fukushima, a small Japanese microgrid allowed a senior citizen center and a medical facility to stand on its own and functioning. In the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy on the east coast of the US, small microgrid allowed portions of 2 universities, not to mention the FDA research facility, to continue having power. Few pieces of this microgrid, we've received $1.2 million grant from Department of Energy to build a microgrid controller. It's a hierarchical controller that has primary, secondary, and tertiary control that from the edge of the grid, meaning that integrating building management system into that microgrid, also on the secondary side to maintaining the response to searches up to milliseconds, and then the third part is about economic dispatch of generation within that boundary. The second grant that we have received from Department of Energy as part of this project, it's a $4 million grant that would allow us to install energy storage and solar within the microgrid. Sunshot program of Department of Energy, their ambition is to create to develop technologies and business and control mechanism in a way that the economics of solar gets to 4 cents per kilowatt hour. It's pretty aggressive, and what we are doing in order to support that vision is to improve the forecast of load and as well as solar within the footprint, and in an optimized way, operating solar and storage together. We've been working, so I talked about microgrid. It's from a technical standpoint, it's a cutting edge project, but it will be built, this project will be built in 2 phases. It will be the first world's cluster microgrid, tying together the community microgrid, meaning that on the medium voltage side of the meter, a utility owned to a privately owned campus microgrid at Illinois Institute of Technology, which is a technical university with 9 megawatts of generation. Among the 1,060 customers are 10, which have been identified as providing critical public service, including the headquarters of the Chicago Fire and Police Department, and microgrid will be powered by at least 750 kW of solar and half a megawatt of energy storage for 4 hours. The project will be built in the south side of Chicago, which is a community of, it's a diverse community in terms of the types of customers within that neighborhood. Chicago is I would say that the notion of neighborhood is quite unique even in the US, and talking and with different types of customers within neighborhood, including College of Optometry, that they have sensitive equipment to power quality, to senior citizen home, to police headquarters. So that's a mix of different types of customers that would allow us to test and understand one size fits all is not something that we would like to see in the future. The technologies relied to operate in the microgrid, notably including in the microgrid master controller, will be tested in a state-of-the-art power hardware in the Loop lab. That's a lab that we have, it's an RTDS lab that we have commissioned recently to test micro PMU's microgrid controller that I talked about, as well as rethinking through the design of our system. So we are going through a tremendous effort to see how the design of our terminal design at the substation should change on the 34 kV and 12 kV, and then how number of different technologies that we put on the grid, they compete with each other, how we have to change the configuration and our standards. And that's a lab that would allow us to test those configurations and those designs. There does not currently exist a widely accepted industry standard to how to value contributions of microgrid providing resiliency. As a research and demonstration project, we expect to learn a great deal from this microgrid investment. It's a $25 million investment that we are developing, and we are coming up with 50 different metrics to measure the impact in the community, and we have put those 50 metrics into 3 different categories of the impact on the system, electric infrastructure, the impact on the critical infrastructure, and the impact in the community, as well as the economic impact of resilience. In the future, one might imagine a constellation of microgrid that allow the clean, resilient energy system benefits to propagate and become the new normal in energy system design and operation. In different parts of the world, these microgrids might offer different types of values. In more rural area, microgrids might be most affordable way to provide reliable power. In more urban places like city of Chicago, microgrid might also provide the resiliency capabilities that are also so crucial. ComEd is also partnering with Bronzeville, the neighborhood, to leverage these energy system investments and advances to create benefits that extend beyond traditional utility borders, creating advantages for community and helping it to become more connected, green, and resilient. We refer to this concept and the associated initiative as Community of the Future. It's a strategic initiative that encompasses much of what we are most proud of at ComEd, because it's about leveraging all of the resources that we have as a company to create advantages for all of our communities and at the neighborhood level. For us, this makes sense because we are not going anywhere. We can't pick up our poles and move to New Zealand. When our communities prosper, we would say that ComEd would prosper. A number of projects are underway, already making impact and addressing the identified priorities by the neighborhood and community, with even more to come. A few examples, but what you see here, the street light, it's a off-grid lighting. The solution has solar, as you can see, and it's powered by solar, wind, and there's like a battery on it that can save energy for 9 hours or so. We collect that data from this system and we integrate it into our local schools curriculum to inspire our future clean energy workforce. Another project that I can give you as an example is a home energy portal and pay it forward. Through this online portal, residents and businesses can take advantage of incentives to cut energy usage and then share it with the saving to a neighboring need or pledge them towards a common community cause. Another example that I can mention is peer-to-peer energy efficiency marketplace. The program is created where energy efficient attributes and carbon reduction can be produced and sold, providing an innovative opportunities for progressive corporations to contribute towards meeting their sustainability commitments. And then many, many more projects that we have listed here for you to see. One example that I would like to highlight is the mobility, in mobility domain, provides local seniors with clean and affordable transportation service to close the first last mile mobility gap. What we are learning through this is not a typical traditional utility project, if you will, but we are learning about how residents use this microtransit service and how it might grow and ultimately impact the electric system. Another example of the project that we are working on is to leveraging our fiber communication infrastructure to provide connectivity, information, and opportunity for engagement via those smart kiosks on the street level. Specifically, this will leverage our dark fiber to provide these services, including gigabyte Wi-Fi. So around like 3 meters around that area, it's in a low-income type neighborhood. There's a free Wi-Fi, and then it pays for itself, and it has like advertising opportunities, and we have a number of companies lining up to share the data. It's connected to our City of Chicago command center, and in any kind of announcement goes through and gets communicated with citizens around the neighborhood. We are seeing a model take off in the US where these kiosks can be completely self-funding by bringing different revenue streams. And then yet another example of project bringing the youth in the neighborhood to the conversation, challenging them to create solutions that will benefit their community, providing them with the STEM educational opportunities and mentorship to support them in joining future energy workforce. It was quite an interesting journey. These students worked on a number of neat projects, including we gave them a number of sensors, and they are high school students, and they came up with ideas such as where, by noise detection, where the city can identify the population of rats. Well, that's one of our problems in Chicago. And then to conclude, the world is changing. We are facing challenges, but with the right mix of ambition, collaboration, and leadership, our future will be bright. While the future we are describing here may appear unattainable or distant at the moment, this will soon become a new normal. We must allow ourselves to have this ambition's strategic vision to address those global challenges. The new normal will be what we make it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shay. We have an opportunity for some questions. In the centre aisle here. If you can identify yourself, please.
Hello, I'm Bryce Cleveland from Powerco, Palmerston North. Your microgrid investigation that you're about to build, is that isolated from the rest of the local network of that area, or is that part of and therefore supported by the original network?
Let me see if I understood your question correctly. You ask about where the support of those projects are coming from?
The microgrid itself, you've got its own capacity of generation within it, and it's supporting its own region, an intermediate region, as I could see what you're doing. But the infrastructure that was originally in that neighbourhood,
I see.
Is that separate? Is it a unique entity within the original network, which is self-supporting and separate, or is it supported by the original network?
Yeah, that's a good question. The microgrid it's a 7 megawatt microgrid, and the neighborhood was fed by 934 and 12 kV system from 2 different substations. When we went through the redesigning and revisiting that infrastructure part, we tried to design it in a way that as many customers as possible, they get fed through an open, with a normally open switch feed. And that means that we ran 4 different feeders from 2 substations. There's some technical learning associated with that. We are planning on going on islanded mode 4 times a year. That means that when we are synchronizing back to 2 substations, we have to look into how we create a segmentation strategy, as well as resynchronizing back with the phase angle, and how we have to make sure this happens. We revisited our corrective maintenance procedure. We are targeting, without the generation part, the safety of 0.01, which is quite ambitious. We revisited our tree trimming, so not only the infrastructure part and the design, we looked at it. We tried to look at every aspect of our business differently to make sure that the goal will be achieved. Then, on top of that, we do not own generation. We are a vertically integrated utility. That means that we are a cable company. We have transmission and distribution system. We just transfer electrons from point A to point B. We are going through an RFP process to invite third-party generation within that footprint. And both for solar as well as for dispatchable generation. And what we are going through is we are looking at the segmentation of the feeders and the types of customers, and asking for generation, the combination of gas, fuel cell. We are trying very hard to limit the amount of diesel generation, maybe for as minimum as possible, to have it just only for black start. But it will be all third party and behind the meter type participation in the system.
Is there a further question, I think, to the back?
Bishoy Mikhail from Alpine Energy. My question is really a continuation to a question that got asked before of what will the network look like in 40 to 50 years' time? So with all these innovation projects that's going on and microgrids and peer-to-peer share market, are all these projects going to deem our multi-million-dollar existing assets of generation, transmission, and distribution obsolete at some stage? Even part obsolete, maybe?
I wish I could see the future, but the combination of centralized, I don't think the transmission lines are going to go away. If you like wind, at least in the US with the magnitude of the distance, then definitely you gotta like transmission lines. Behind the meter technologies, it's something that the cost of a technology is awfully going down and being cost effective, and smart inverters and building management system, they ought to be part of the operation. However, there is a gap in between how we can utilize those or integrate those types of technologies into our day-to-day operation. We don't have the visibility to see and measure that type of technologies behind the meter. So there is a need to create communication infrastructure that is fast enough and it's resilient enough to make sure that those get integrated in the system. I see the future to be more of a, this is my personal opinion, as a platform. And Olivia talked about the business model of Uber and Amazon. And I see that as a utility, we are not only moving electrons from point A to point B, but we are creating a transaction. So we are facilitating. And the network economy would tell you that the more transaction you have in your platform is more valuable. What we are trying to do at ComEd is to rethinking our business model and looking at the capabilities we have to put in place in terms of, on the grid side, in terms of our workforce, and in terms of how we can enable our customers to make that platform stronger. I'd be happy to share with you a couple of publications that we have around this platform economy and how it translates into capabilities of the grid.
Thank you, Shay. Look, just conscious of time here, I would like to bring the session to a close. So is Mike Whaley here? If I could ask Mike to come to the stage and propose a vote of thanks to Shay.
We do indeed live in a changing world, and our stakeholders are expecting new and changing things. Atmospheric thinking, inclusiveness, connectedness, flexibility, efficiency, resilience, all very useful keywords. Dr. Bahramirad, your presentation helps us as we strive to understand where the changing expectations and technologies might take us to the new normal. Thank you very much for your invitation to Chicago. I really do hope you enjoy your stay in New Zealand, and it's my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks. Thank you very much.